Good morning, YouTube. Today we're going to check out the hydraulic saw and the power unit that I built to run it. This is going to be a little bit longer video, but we'll have some carving at the end. Here's a little teaser of how the saw actually cuts. Alright, there's the first two cuts of that eagle. We'll finish that up at the end of the video. This is the CS05 hydraulic chainsaw by Stanley. I'm running a 14-inch tuning tip bar on it with a Pico chain. As you can tell, there's no chain brake, so there's no anti-kickback on the saw, but it's kind of built into it because it'll stop if you pinch the bar, as you could tell with those first two cuts. Sometimes I get a little over anxious trying to make the curves. So this saw is ran by this power unit. It's not the prettiest thing ever, but I built it as cheaply as I possibly could just to see what I could do with it and to see if I like the hydraulic saw. It's got a 5 horsepower motor on it that spins 3,400 RPM, which is important because you have to calculate your gallons per minute to be between 5 and 6 gallons per minute for that saw. This has a 0.36 cubic inch pump on it. Now that you've seen my power unit, it's time for me to tell you the things I want to change about it. I wish I would have made it with a 7 horse motor instead of the 5 horse motor. And it really needs to have a radiator on it. I carved this bear right here, and after an hour carving this bear, really get into carving, it started getting hot, and I shut it down for about 15-20 minutes to let it cool down. I didn't have to let it cool down yet. It was not actually overheating. I just don't like holding on to a hot saw. That saw actually does get hot in your hands. It's one thing that most people who run the hydraulic saw won't tell you about. Also, there's the fact of pulling those hoses around. You get used to it after a while, but they're always there. They're always in the way. But I don't like freezing once again. So all winter long, I carve with the hydraulic saw. I carve 12-foot tall carvings, as you've seen in some of my other videos. It doesn't really keep me from carving. As a matter of fact, it makes it so I can carve more. I can be out here at 11 o'clock at night and the neighbors don't know I'm out here. I also don't get the fatigue I get from carving with the gas saws. That vibration you get in your hands, the tingly feeling, I don't get that at night. The hydraulic saw does not have any of that kind of vibration to it at all. There's a little bit of something that comes from the chain, but not that intense vibration. Now on the downside, I love the gas saws. I love carving with them. They have a little bit more chain speed. They're a lot more portable. You're not going to carry that power unit around and just plug it in anywhere. You have to have 30 amp 220 just to run it. So it's got some trade-offs to it. Now as far as the stats on the hydraulic saw, if you have a tractor or bobcat that flows 7 to 9 gallons per minute and it's close to 2,000 psi, you can get the saw and run it off of it. But it'll cost a lot more than running it off an electric power unit. And then you're also having to chase gas and all the other things. With this power unit, all I have to do is put a little more oil in it once a week. It's usually about a gallon of oil. Alright, so the number one question, cost. How much does it cost to run the saw? What's the saw cost? What's the power unit cost? All of that depends. If you run the saw hard, it might cost a little more than when you're just carving here and there. But the price to run it, as far as the electric bill goes, it's not any more than running an air compressor. So if you're running an air compressor, that's about what you're running power-wise through that. I know it being 220, it seems like it should be more, but 220 makes the electricity cost cheaper. Now, as far as building the power unit, you can build one for less than $1,000. And I mean just under $1,000. Whether or not you want to do that, that's up to you. I would highly recommend adding some sort of cooler to it. A radiator or some sort. There's multiple different ways you can cool it down. I've seen people put hoses and buckets of ice water to cool them down, but I'm not going that route. I definitely am going to build another power unit. I'm going to build it so that I can run the CS06, the bigger Stanley saw. And I'll also be running a 7 horsepower motor on that. And I believe that runs more gallons per minute as well. The saw itself, if you find them on eBay, you can find them from anywhere to $500 to $1,200 used. It's something that you can buy used. It's a hydraulic piece of equipment. Hydraulics don't wear out like gas engines do. So if anything goes wrong, you put in a couple of new O-rings in there and you have a brand new saw. Everything else is just kind of a lifetime part. Alright, there you go. There's the hydraulic saw and a little bit of the battery saw. My next video is going to be on the steel battery saws. I have 3 out of the 4. So I'll be giving you a rundown on all of those, battery run times, how they carve, how much they actually can cut, what they're good for and what they're not good for. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next time.